I've always been the odd one out in my family. My name's Nolan, I'm 26, and somehow I'm still the kid at every family gathering. Not because I act immature or don't have my life together. Far from it. I've got a stable job, I live alone in a decent apartment, I cook for myself, pay my bills, keep my nose clean. But none of that seems to matter when you're the youngest sibling in a family that's allergic to treating you like an adult. It's like there's a script that everyone else got the memo for, where I'm cast as the clueless little brother, the comic relief, the one who should be grateful just to be included. Only I'm not laughing anymore. My sister, Claire, is 5 years older than me. Growing up, we weren't close, not in the way some siblings are. She was always more aligned with our parents, polished, high-achieving, camera-ready. I was the quiet one, more bookish, less competitive. Our parents always seemed more invested in her milestones. First car, first boyfriend, first job, everything Claire did was a headline. When I got accepted into college, they barely looked up from their phones. When I graduated, they didn't come to the ceremony. It's just a bachelor's, my dad had shrugged. Claire could have sneezed on a test and gotten a participation ribbon, and they would have framed it. Still, I've made peace with that imbalance over the years. Or at least, I thought I had. I stopped trying to win their approval and built my own sense of worth. But every once in a while, something happens that reminds me just how deep the favoritism runs. And this time, it wasn't just hurtful. It was humiliating. It started with a dinner invitation. Claire sent me a message on a Thursday afternoon. Just a casual text. Dinner this Saturday at Mom and Dad's. Everyone will be there. Bring something if you want. No details. No warmth. Not even a please. That's Claire, efficient and emotionally vacant. I asked who everyone included, and she replied, me, Logan, Mom, Dad, Uncle Rick, maybe Aunt Jenna if she's in town. Just come. I knew that Logan referred to her new boyfriend, the one she'd been parading around like some kind of Wall Street trophy. I'd only met him once before, at a rushed brunch months ago, where he'd spent most of the time on his phone, correcting the waiter's pronunciation of croque monsieur and bragging about his investment portfolio. Claire had met him through one of those dating apps with a paywall. He was older, mid-30s, a self-proclaimed entrepreneur who dressed like he was always on his way to a yacht meeting. I wasn't impressed then, and I wasn't looking forward to seeing him again. But hey, family dinner, right? How bad could it be? I made a pasta salad. Nothing fancy, but I used good ingredients, sun-dried tomatoes, fresh mozzarella, arugula, a balsamic glaze I'd been obsessed with. I figured it'd be nice to contribute something homemade since Claire's idea of bringing something is usually store-bought wine with a price tag she leaves on so people can see it. I even shaved early and wore a button-up. Stupid, maybe, but part of me still wanted to be taken seriously. Just once. When I got there, the vibe was off from the jump. The door was open, so I let myself in. Claire was already in the kitchen, in full hostess mode. Apron on, hair pinned back, barking orders like Gordon Ramsay with a platinum card. Logan was leaning against the counter with a glass of wine, talking loudly about some tech startup disrupting the energy sector. My mom was lighting candles on the dining table. My dad was nowhere in sight, probably in the den with the TV volume at max. Hey, I said, setting my bowl on the counter. Claire gave me a once-over. Oh, you brought pasta. I blinked. Yeah, I thought. Well, we already have 2 starches, but I guess we'll make room, she said, not looking at me as she moved it to the side, like it was a Tupperware of spoiled leftovers. Logan raised his glass toward me, his smile just a little too tight. Glad you could join us, Nolan. Big night. Adults only at this table. He winked like he was making some sort of joke, but nobody laughed, except my mom, who gave that high-pitched, nervous giggle she uses when she wants to smooth over awkwardness without actually standing up for anyone. I stood there, confused. What? Claire chimed in like it was perfectly normal. Yeah, we thought we'd try something different this time. Just a more curated dinner experience. Mature conversation, wine pairings, that kind of thing. So, where am I sitting? I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. Logan pointed behind me toward the coat rack. There was a wobbly, metal stool shoved against the wall, next to the umbrella stand. No placemat. No napkin. Just a paper plate and a plastic cup. Like I was the neighbor kid who showed up uninvited. I figured you'd be fine there, Claire said, brushing past me with a tray of appetizers. We didn't have enough seats, and you're the youngest. I stared at the stool, then at her. Are you serious? It's just a seat, Nolan. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. Nobody else said anything. Not my mom. Not even Uncle Rick, who usually had some sarcastic remark locked and loaded. They all just went along with it. Like this was normal. Like I deserved it. I sat down because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to cause a scene. Not yet. I balanced my plate on my knees and picked at the pasta salad while the rest of them clinked glasses and passed around dishes I wasn't offered. I could hear Logan making a toast, something about growth and prosperity, and Claire beaming like she'd just won an award. They laughed. They shared stories. They reminisced about vacations I wasn't invited to. I felt invisible. No, scratch that. I felt small. And that feeling stuck with me as I chewed cold pasta and tried to swallow my pride. But something else started to rise up, too. Something slow and sharp and long overdue. Resentment. Because this wasn't just about a stool or a joke that went too far. This was about every slight that had gone unchallenged. Every birthday forgotten. Every time they treated me like background noise in their curated little lives. I realized, sitting there with my knees cramped and my pride bruised, that I wasn't going to let this slide. Not this time. They wanted to treat me like the kid table? Fine. Let's see how the adults handle what's coming next. I tried to tell myself it was just one dinner. That if I sat through it quietly, didn't make a fuss, I could leave with my dignity intact. But the longer I stayed in that cramped little corner of the dining room, the more impossible it became to ignore what was really happening. This wasn't just some awkward seating arrangement. It was a message, and they made sure I heard it loud and clear. Every little detail screamed it. Claire had printed out custom menus with Logan's name at the top, curated by Chef Logan. They weren't even kidding. There were 5 courses, each with a wine pairing, and Logan introduced each dish like he was hosting a cooking show. This next course, he said with a smug smile, is a dry-aged ribeye over truffle mash with a red wine reduction. Pairs beautifully with a 2015 Bordeaux. He didn't even glance in my direction. My plate was still bare. I cleared my throat. Should I grab a plate, or— "Oh, there's none left," Claire said flatly. "We pre-portioned everything. I didn't think you'd want steak anyway. You're more of a pasta guy, right?" She said it with a smile so fake it belonged in a wax museum. I looked down at my cold salad. "Right." Uncle Rick chuckled. "Don't be so sensitive, Nolan. You've got food, don't you?" I bit the inside of my cheek. "Yeah. Gourmet plastic plate. Vintage." Logan snorted at that like it was a personal insult. "Hey, we try to make this evening elegant. Not our fault if some people can't appreciate the vibe." Claire leaned across the table and whispered something in his ear, then shot me a warning look. I wasn't supposed to talk back, clearly. I was supposed to laugh, nod, fade into the wallpaper. And I might have done just that, if that had been the end of it. But it wasn't. Dessert rolled around, and they brought out this ridiculous tiered platter of macarons and chocolate-dipped strawberries and some kind of lavender mousse. Logan held it up for everyone to admire. "Claire and I picked these up from that little patisserie in the historic district," he said proudly. "Imported ingredients. Top shelf." I waited, thinking maybe they'd pass it around. They didn't. I guess they forgot I was even there. Or pretended to. Claire made this big show of wiping Logan's mouth with a cloth napkin, then laughing at something he whispered to her. My mom looked on like she was watching royalty. Even my dad, who'd emerged from whatever cave he'd been in, nodded approvingly. "I don't remember seeing these when I walked in," I said louder now. Claire turned slowly, like I'd interrupted a sacred ceremony. "Oh, we didn't think you'd want dessert. I didn't think I had to request to be treated like a person." That earned a couple of raised eyebrows. Logan set down his wine glass. "Dude, relax. You're acting like this is some big conspiracy. It's just dinner." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Just dinner." I got up, walked to the kitchen, and grabbed a glass of water to cool myself down. I was spiraling, and I knew it. My heart was racing, my palms were sweaty, and all I could think about was every time they'd made me feel like this growing up. Every family vacation where I slept on the floor. Every birthday where Claire got to invite friends, and I got a card with no money inside. Every Sunday dinner where I washed the dishes while she got praised for showing up late. I'd spent years convincing myself that maybe they didn't know what they were doing, that it wasn't intentional. But now, it was hard to ignore the fact that they were enjoying it. They liked watching me squirm. The final blow came when I stepped back into the dining room and saw Logan, arm around Claire, saying loudly enough for the whole table to hear, "Well, I guess next time we'll just put Nolan at the kids' table with a juice box and crayons." The table erupted in laughter. Even my mom. Even my dad. That laughter did something to me. It cracked something open. Something old. Something deep. I didn't say anything. I just turned around, walked outside, and stood on the porch with my hands in my pockets. It was cold. My ears stung. But I needed that air more than I needed dessert. I stayed out there for maybe 15 minutes. Long enough to collect my thoughts, not long enough to be missed. When I came back inside, they were talking about money. Of course they were. Logan was on his fourth glass of wine, rambling about crypto investments and property portfolios, and my dad, who doesn't understand the difference between a router and a toaster, was nodding like Logan was reading gospel. "We're looking at this penthouse downtown," Claire was saying. "2 balconies, marble countertops, smart appliances. Logan thinks we can close by February." "Not think," Logan corrected. "No, we've got the liquidity. It's just about timing." "Must be nice," Uncle Rick chimed in. "Wish I had that kind of flexibility." "Well," Logan said, "it's all about having the right network. And taking risks. You can't build an empire playing it safe." He glanced at me when he said that, and I finally said what I'd been biting back all night. "Remind me, what exactly do you do again, Logan?" The room quieted. Logan gave a tight smile. "Investments. I manage assets." Claire jumped in. "He has clients in tech and finance. It's very high level." "Right," I said. "But like, you don't have an office, right?" "I work remotely." "And your last startup, what happened with that?" Logan's smile faltered. Claire cut in again. "Why are you interrogating him, Nolan?" "Just making conversation," I said, sipping my water. Logan shifted in his seat. "Look, I don't need to justify my success. I live comfortably. That's all that matters." Claire reached for his hand. "Don't let him get to you." "I'm not," he said, but his voice was thinner now, less polished. And that's when the kicker came. My dad, of all people, leaned forward and said, "You know, Logan, if you're serious about expanding, you might want to talk to Nolan. He's good with numbers. Works in logistics, right?" I blinked. Was this the compliment? Before I could respond, Logan laughed, loud and sharp. "No offense, Mr. and Mrs. D, but I think I'll manage without the advice of a pasta salad connoisseur." The room froze. Claire didn't say a word. Neither did my parents. That was the moment I knew exactly where I stood. Not just at the table, but in the family. I nodded slowly. "Got it." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a fit. I just excused myself to the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, and stared at the tile wall for a few minutes while my face burned with quiet rage. But when I came back out, I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm. Too calm. Because I'd already made a decision. I wasn't going to keep begging for respect from people who treated me like an afterthought. No, I was going to teach them what happens when you underestimate someone just because they don't demand the spotlight. I returned to my little stool and sat in silence as they finished their 5th course. Logan kept babbling. Claire kept sipping. The evening went on like nothing had happened. But then the waiter showed up. Yeah, the waiter. Because, surprise, this wasn't a family dinner at my parents' house. It was at a rented estate in the hills. A private dining event. Claire had booked the whole thing through some exclusive catering company that offered intimate luxury experiences. I hadn't realized at first because the layout looked like a typical open-concept house. But it wasn't. The staff had been discreet until now, slipping in and out through a back door, serving quietly. Now they were collecting plates and preparing the bill. And when that sleek black folder hit the table in front of Logan, I could see the number from across the room. $3,900. My mom gasped. "Oh wow, I thought this was just going to be a little dinner." Claire brushed it off. "It's fine. Logan's got it." Everyone turned to look at him. His smile cracked. Yeah," he said. "Sure. I'll just need a moment." He pulled out his phone. I watched his thumb hover nervously over the screen. Then he froze. Something was wrong. He cleared his throat. "Actually, Claire, could you?" Claire's face paled. "What do you mean?" Logan laughed nervously. "I thought it would be cheaper. I didn't realize we went over $4,000. My dad shifted uncomfortably. "You said you had this." "I do," Logan said quickly. "It's just, some of my money is tied up right now. Transfers, and, whatever, it doesn't matter. Babe, just spot me for now." Claire hesitated. "I don't have my card on me. I thought you were paying." My mom whispered, "Oh dear." The waiter stepped back politely, waiting, and that's when I stood up. I smirked, leaned against the edge of the table, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Why don't we just put it on Mr. Moneybags over there?" Logan's eyes darted to mine. Dude, not the time. But it was exactly the time. Because this whole night, every little insult, every fake smile, every snub and humiliation, it led to this moment. The moment they realized they'd hitched their wagon to a fraud. The moment their golden boy started to rust in real time. The moment the little brother they shoved in a corner finally stood up. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I left before the cleanup. I didn't wait to see who paid the bill. I didn't want to watch the awkward scramble or listen to Claire try and salvage Logan's image. I didn't want to hear my mom whisper excuses or my dad sigh in quiet disappointment. I just grabbed my jacket from the coat rack, ironically placed next to my little metal exile throne, and walked out the door. The air outside was cold and sharp. It bit at my cheeks and nose as I headed to my car. I sat behind the wheel for a while, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked defeated. And not just from the dinner. From years of dinners. Years of being sidelined, patronized, and smothered under layers of shallow smiles and passive remarks. Years of being the kid, even as I paid my own bills and stood on my own feet. I started the car, but didn't drive home right away. Instead, I drove past my exit and kept going. Through town, past the dimly lit shops and sleepy intersections. I pulled into an empty parking lot behind a gas station and just sat there, letting the silence wrap around me. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel, my leg bounced. I didn't cry. I don't know why. Maybe I had years of practice keeping it all down. But something did crack open inside me that night, and I knew I couldn't go back to pretending this was normal. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. A few texts from Claire. "Are you serious? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You don't understand how complicated things are." I ignored them. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't apologize. She just needed me to clean up the image she cared so much about. Logan didn't text at all. Coward. Later that day, my mom left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Nolan, call us. Please. That wasn't fair, what you said. Logan's a guest. We don't humiliate guests." I deleted it. Because that's what it always came down to, didn't it? Image over integrity. Appearances over truth. Claire's feelings mattered. Logan's ego mattered. My dad's silence. That was sacred. But me? I was expected to swallow it. Again. And again. But I didn't. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. Still, the weeks that followed weren't easy. Christmas came and went. I wasn't invited. New Year's Eve passed without a single call or message. I saw a photo of the family on Facebook. Claire in a gold dress, Logan pouring champagne, my parents smiling like they weren't missing a thing. Like I'd never existed. Like they'd just edited me out. And it hurt. It hurt more than I thought it would. I spent New Year's Eve alone on my couch, watching a rerun of some fireworks special and drinking a cheap beer I didn't even finish. At midnight, I didn't cheer. I just stared out the window at the empty street and thought about how quiet loneliness is when you finally stop trying to fight it. I hit a low after that. Not dramatically. Not in some movie scene breakdown. Just slowly. Quietly. Like fog creeping into a room. Work felt meaningless. I stopped cooking real meals and went back to frozen dinners. My apartment felt smaller. I barely spoke to anyone outside of necessary interactions. I stopped checking my phone because all it did was remind me of who wasn't reaching out. But even in that fog, something shifted. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't even conscious. It started with my old notebook, one I hadn't touched in years. Back in college, I used to sketch business ideas. Nothing fancy, just little notes, logos, product concepts, things I'd daydream about during long lectures. I'd always had a head for logistics, for systems. While other kids were obsessed with apps and influencers, I'd been drawing out plans for streamlining food deliveries, warehouse systems, courier networks. I found the notebook under a stack of tax papers. Dusty, pages yellowing at the corners. But as I flipped through it, something stirred. There was one idea I kept coming back to. A micro-logistics platform tailored for local vendors and independent delivery drivers. Something clean, customizable, plug-and-play. No bloated app. Just a reliable backbone for mom-and-pop shops and small-town operations. I didn't know what compelled me to revisit it. Maybe I just needed a distraction. Maybe I needed something that was mine. So I started tinkering. Nights after work, I'd fire up my laptop and start building out the framework. Nothing crazy, just spreadsheets at first, then a rough UI using no-code tools. I kept it simple, clean, focused. I did some research on similar services, found the gaps, poked holes in their models. I took notes, refined. Days passed, then weeks. I stopped checking Facebook. I stopped waiting for texts from Claire or anyone else. I poured my energy into this thing that made me feel useful again, seen, even if only by myself. Eventually, I reached out to a few local bakeries and restaurants, places I used to visit back when I still tried new things. I pitched them a beta version, free to use, just give me feedback. A couple said no. One said maybe. Then a tiny cafe on the east side said yes. And that was all I needed. I tweaked the system for them, integrated their menu, mapped delivery zones, set up driver scheduling. I checked the back end obsessively, watched it go live, watched it work. Within a month, they said their orders were 22% faster and customer complaints dropped. 2 more businesses signed on. Then 5. I wasn't making real money yet, but I wasn't trying to. I was building proof, building a case, building something. Around that time, I got a call from my old friend Josh. We'd been close in college, but drifted after graduation. He worked in mid-level operations at a regional courier company now. He'd seen one of my LinkedIn posts, just a vague update about my project. Dude, he said, this is legit. You should pitch this. Pitch it to who? Anyone with a brain and a budget. Come by the office next week. I'll introduce you to our manager. I nearly said no, but something told me not to. So I cleaned myself up, printed out a 10-page overview of my system, and made my way into their office like I belonged there. The meeting went better than I expected. They weren't offering me a contract, not yet, but they were interested in a pilot program. 1 region, 6 weeks, paid. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was the first real validation I'd gotten in months. And it felt good. So I said yes. Over the next few weeks, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. I streamlined the code, updated the UX, worked with their team to customize it for their routes. I barely slept, barely saw daylight, but I was alive in a way I hadn't been in years. One night, maybe a week into the pilot, I got a text from Claire. Hey, can we talk? That was it. No context, no apology, just a message that hung there, like a fishing line dangling from a dock. I didn't respond. She sent another a few days later. Mom said you've been busy with some app or business or something. That's cool. I didn't know you were doing that. Still no apology. Still no acknowledgement of what happened. I stared at that message for a long time before locking my phone and getting back to work. Because here's the thing. When you start to rebuild yourself, piece by piece, you stop needing the people who broke you to help you heal. You stop waiting for their approval. You stop needing their praise. You realize you're enough on your own. And even better, you realize they're not nearly as powerful as they made themselves out to be. Which brings us to the moment that set everything in motion. A week before the pilot ended, Josh pulled me aside and said, Hey, heads up, there's a networking dinner this Saturday. It's kind of a big deal. Some investors, tech people, logistics execs. You should come. I already put your name on the list. I hesitated. I'm not really the networking type. Yeah, well, neither are half the people there. Just show up. We're a blazer. Be you. I said I'd think about it. That Saturday, I almost bailed. But then I remembered Claire's dinner. The coat rack. The stool. The plastic plate. The laughter. And something in me snapped into place. I did wear a blazer. I did show up. And as fate would have it, I wasn't the only one. Because there, standing by the bar with a glass of white wine in her hand, was Claire. In a black cocktail dress, hair perfect, scanning the room like she owned it. And standing beside her, Logan. He looked thinner, pale, like he hadn't been sleeping well. He caught my eye, and his smile froze. I smiled back, slow, calm, because this time, I wasn't the little brother in the corner. I wasn't the afterthought. I was the storm they didn't see coming. And I had a plan. Claire saw me before I could decide whether to make the first move. Her eyes locked on mine across the crowd, and I watched her expression flicker. First surprise, then calculation. She nudged Logan gently, and he turned to look at me with the same hesitant smirk I'd seen the night of the dinner. But now it was thinner, hollow, almost scared. I hadn't expected to see them here, but I shouldn't have been surprised. If there was a semi-formal event with a chance for networking, image building, or being photographed shaking hands with someone remotely successful, Claire would be there. And if she was there, Logan wouldn't be far behind, clinging to the illusion of relevance. I straightened my blazer, adjusted my collar, and walked over to the refreshment table to pour myself some water. Not alcohol, not yet. I needed to be sharp. My mind was racing with ideas. It wasn't just about avoiding them or confronting them. This was something else. This was opportunity. Claire approached first, leaving Logan to trail behind her like a nervous little dog. "Nolan," she said, her voice rising an octave too high. "I didn't know you'd be here." I gave her a smile that said nothing. "Yeah, crazy, right?" She looked me over, clearly trying to piece together how I'd managed to land an invitation. I could see it in her eyes, the subtle math of status, trying to figure out who I knew, what I was worth, what she might have missed. "Are you, here with someone?" she asked, tilting her head. "I'm on the guest list," I replied simply. "Got invited by a company I've been consulting with." Logan perked up. "You're doing consulting now?" "Sort of. More like a partnership. I built something they liked." Claire's smile faltered slightly. "Well, that's unexpected." I leaned in a little. "Yeah. Turns out I do more than bring pasta to family dinners." She flushed. Logan cleared his throat. "We were just talking to a guy from Bristol Capital. Big investment group. Might be some opportunities for us there." I nodded. "That's so." He puffed up. "Yeah. I've been restructuring some stuff lately. Diversifying the portfolio. Translation, nothing's working, and he's hoping someone rich throws him a rope." "Good luck with that," I said, sipping my water. These people can smell desperation from a mile away. His smirk faded entirely. Claire tried to salvage the mood. "Well, we should catch up sometime soon. Maybe dinner." "Oh, I'd love that," I said, then looked directly at Logan. "You'll bring your wallet this time, right?" And with that, I walked away. I didn't see them for the rest of the night, but I made sure they saw me. I made the rounds, shook hands, had real conversations. People remembered my name. I was introduced as the guy behind that pilot logistics program. I had a clean one-sheet printed out, simple branding, QR code, high-level overview. Nothing flashy, just clear, professional, serious. The same way I was starting to feel about myself. I got home that night and sat at my desk, adrenaline still buzzing through me. That run-in with Claire and Logan hadn't been a confrontation, not really. But it was a crack in the ice. A signal. I had leverage now. Maybe not the kind you use in court or on paper, but something deeper. They'd burned me for years. I was finally holding the match. And I had a plan. Not a petty one. Not some childish gotcha moment. No, this had to be slow. Subtle. I didn't want just revenge. I wanted collapse. I wanted them to feel what I felt. To watch everything they built on lies and appearances start to sink. And I wanted to do it without ever raising my voice. Just facts. Just quiet moves. Just truth. First, I started with Logan. Or rather, Logan's business. The mess of buzzwords and half-baked startups he used to prop up his ego. Using nothing but public information, a little research, and some time on LinkedIn, I started pulling threads. Turns out, Logan had a lot of fancy-sounding titles, with very little to back them up. The holding company he bragged about, registered to a P.O. box. No website. No actual clients listed. The app he said was being prepped for series of funding. A half-finished prototype from 3 years ago. His most recent venture, something about AI-driven property evaluation, was just a recycled Wix page with stock photos. I built a dossier. Nothing illegal. All publicly available info. Screenshots. Links. Names. Emails. Then I set up a simple web page. Nothing more than a quiet little blog with a bland name. Emerging Ventures Watch. Sounded official enough. I wrote up a report on Logan's business ventures. Just facts. No editorializing. No malice. Just data, timelines, and questions. I added a source section linking to every public filing and article I used. I let it sit. I didn't even share it yet. That was for later. Next, I turned to Claire. This was trickier. She didn't have fake companies or flimsy apps. But what she did have was a job built entirely on perception. She worked in PR, which meant her job was image. She posted polished content constantly. LinkedIn posts about resilience and female leadership. Instagram stories of brunches, rooftop parties, charity galas. She curated her life like a lifestyle brand. I created a dummy LinkedIn account. Fake name. Realistic job title. I joined the same industry group she was in and started commenting. Occasionally dropping hints about PR agencies that were blacklisting problematic hires and getting stricter with reputation audits. Then, I emailed her company anonymously with a polite tip. One of your employees has been using company resources to promote her boyfriend's questionable startups on client-facing platforms. I attached screenshots of Claire's Instagram stories tagging Logan's ventures during branded events. Stuff that could technically be seen as conflict of interest. Again, nothing criminal, but enough to raise an eyebrow. That's all I needed. Because perception is everything in her world. Let the seeds of doubt do their work. Finally, I did something I hadn't done in years. I reconnected with my cousin Drew. Drew and I were close as kids, but we'd grown apart. He was a couple years older and used to babysit me when Claire and the rest were too busy pretending I didn't exist. He'd always had a good head on his shoulders. Quiet, observant, knew when to listen, and more importantly, he hated Logan. Apparently, Logan had tried to pitch Drew's company on some sketchy investment deal a year ago. It went south fast. Drew never forgot. We met for coffee. I told him everything. Not in a bitter way, just plainly. I laid out the details, showed him the research, shared what I was building. He listened carefully, took notes, asked smart questions. Then he leaned back and said, "You know, there's a charity auction coming up next month. It's kind of a big deal. A lot of investors. Press. Your sister always makes a scene at those. She's probably planning to accidentally introduce Logan to the board again." "Sounds about right," I said. He smiled. "I get 2 + 1s. Want to crash it with me?" I grinned. It was time. The weeks leading up to the event were surgical. I kept working on my logistics project. The pilot ended successfully, and talks began about expanding to other regions. I didn't broadcast anything. I kept things quiet, steady, focused. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on Claire and Logan, watched their socials, noted who they were networking with, which events they RSVP'd to. Logan had gone unusually quiet online, probably licking his wounds after being unable to pay that dinner bill. Claire, however, was louder than ever. She posted about forgiveness, about family, about growth. None of it aimed directly at me, of course, but we both knew who it was for. She wanted me to come back into the fold, not because she missed me, but because my silence was dangerous, unpredictable, and unpredictability didn't fit her brand. Too bad for her. I wasn't coming back. I was moving forward. The auction was held in a glittering hall downtown. Lights, music, a red carpet. All the trappings of a perfect PR moment. Claire wore a shimmering silver dress. Logan showed up in a midnight blue blazer that was clearly tailored to say, "I'm important." I arrived with Drew, dressed clean, quiet, sharp. I wasn't trying to compete. I wasn't even trying to be noticed. But I was going to be remembered. And so were they. Because tonight, the first domino would fall. And the crash would echo for a long, long time. The charity auction was exactly what I expected. Pretentious, glittery, and crawling with egos in $1,000 shoes. But underneath the glitz, it had one very important element: people who watched. Investors, executives, journalists, PR managers, they all mingled here. Not just for fun, but for power, alliances, deals. Reputation was the currency. Claire and Logan arrived early, naturally. Claire loved to be seen, especially when she thought the cameras might be watching. Her smile was turned up to 11, her dress shimmering under the lights. Logan clung to her side, faking casual confidence. He'd clearly spent too long on his hair, and yet somehow still looked like he hadn't slept in a week. The tension in his shoulders? Visible from across the room. I hung back with Drew, who was chatting up some people he knew in the logistics world. I didn't say much at first. I didn't need to. All I had to do was wait for the first move. Claire spotted us about an hour in. Her eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second. Only a twitch, but then she shifted into her PR smile and made her way toward us, Logan lagging behind. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting her come to me. "Nolan," she said brightly, as if we'd just run into each other at a coffee shop, not after months of radio silence. "What a surprise. I didn't know you were invited." I gave a polite nod. "Drew's my +1. She blinked. "Right." Drew turned, smiling. "Hey, Claire." "Hey, Logan. Good to see you both." Claire tried to hold her expression. Logan gave a tight nod. "Didn't expect to see you here either, Nolan. Are you getting into philanthropy now?" I smiled slowly. "Something like that." Claire didn't let the moment linger. "Well, I'm glad you're here. I know things have been tense, but maybe this is a sign we can all move forward, yeah?" "Funny," I said. I was thinking the same thing. She looked relieved, but only for a second. because then the lights dimmed. The host took the stage, and the first auction items started rolling out. I waited through the first half hour, silent, focused, calm. Then, as the MC moved on to a new speaker, a guest from Bristol Capital, a firm that Logan had desperately been trying to impress, I made my move. I walked over to the networking table, where a stack of industry brochures and QR codes sat, meant for guests to connect with the firms and startups present. I slid in one more brochure, identical in style, layout, and design. Title: Due Diligence Brief. Logan R. Vale and Enterprises Under Scrutiny. It looked like a corporate report. Minimalist. Clean. Professional. Inside were snippets from my dossier. Again, all public info. No accusations. Just facts. Dates. Screenshots. Quotes from old blog posts. Inconsistencies in company names. Conflicting credentials. A subtle, surgical takedown of his entire business narrative. A note at the bottom. Compiled by Emerging Ventures Watch. Contact for sourcing. People wouldn't read it right away. But in this world, these brochures were currency. People always checked. And right next to it, a second brochure. Title: Case Study. Micrologics Pilot Program. Regional Optimization and Route Efficiency. That one was about me. Same style. Same credibility. I made sure they looked like they came from the same agency. Because tonight wasn't just about revenge. It was about replacement. Letting the room know, this is who he is. And this is who I am. The fallout started subtle. A man from a logistics tech firm picked up both brochures. He skimmed them absently, then stopped at Logan's. His brow furrowed. He whispered something to the woman next to him. She looked. Then they pulled out their phones. Later, I saw another man, someone I recognized from Bristol Capital, tuck both brochures under his arm and walk away briskly. I knew what he'd see when he scanned the QR code on Logan's page. A link to the full article. The fake LLCs. The failed product launches. The old Reddit post where Logan asked how to fake wireframe screenshots for an app pitch. By dessert, Logan noticed. I saw him pacing near the back of the room, phone in hand, whispering furiously into his Bluetooth earpiece. Claire was at the bar, glassy-eyed, pretending to laugh at something while glancing toward the exits every few seconds. Then someone from the PR firm that hosted the event approached her. A tall woman in a black dress. Clipboard. Headset. The kind of person who never smiles unless something is wrong. They spoke quietly. Claire's face didn't change. She was trained too well for that. But I saw it in her posture. The sudden stiffness. The tension in her jaw. The way she turned slightly to shield her profile. I didn't need to hear the conversation. I already knew. After the event, everything unraveled quickly. On Monday, Logan's name disappeared from two company websites he'd been advising. One of them issued a vague statement about reevaluating partnerships. The other removed his profile entirely without comment. By Friday, a Medium post titled "The House of Cards: How One Investor Played the Startup Game and Lost" was trending in niche VC circles. It wasn't mine. I didn't have to write it. The research I released was enough for someone else to put it together. Logan's carefully polished image collapsed like wet cardboard. Claire tried to weather it. She posted a few vaguely worded inspirational quotes on her LinkedIn, made a statement about trust and due diligence, and then went quiet. But her own company wasn't thrilled to find her face tagged in promotional posts about ventures now considered questionable. A week later, she was on leave. They didn't say why, but the people in her circles knew. Reputation. It's a fragile thing. 2 weeks later, I got a message from my mom. A long one. She said she'd been shocked by what happened to Claire and Logan. That she had no idea he wasn't legitimate. That the whole family had been trying to support me in their own way, but maybe they hadn't done the best job. She mentioned how things seemed to be going well for me now, and how maybe we could all sit down sometime and have a proper conversation. I read the message twice. Then I archived it. I wasn't angry anymore. Not bitter. Not vengeful. Just done. I'd spent too many years trying to get a seat at their table. Now I was building my own. A month after the auction, my logistics platform, Micrologics, was officially picked up by a regional distributor. Not massive, but real. Sustainable. Profitable. I brought in Josh as a partner, hired a junior dev, and filed for an LLC. I kept the branding clean, the product lean. We weren't flashy, but we were good. At our first internal team dinner, I made pasta salad. Everyone laughed when I brought it out. Not at me. With me. And that felt better than any toast or fancy dinner ever could. Logan? Last I heard, he tried pitching another startup in a different city. Changed his name slightly. It didn't stick. Word travels fast in those circles when your name is radioactive. Claire moved back in with our parents for a while. Her LinkedIn went quiet. Then she started posting motivational quotes again, like nothing ever happened. But every time she applies for a job, every time someone Googles Logan, that little report is still there. Not angry, not cruel, just the truth. Plain and sharp as glass. I never got an apology. Not from Claire. Not from Logan. Not from my parents. But I did get something better. Peace. Freedom. And finally, the satisfaction of knowing that no matter how small they tried to make me feel, I was never the one who needed a stool to stand tall. I just needed the strength to stop asking for a seat and build the table myself.